Okay, good evening, welcome. How is everybody tonight? In day 8 of New Zealand's lockdown. So normally I'd be telling everybody where the bathrooms are and the health and safety rules and what to do in an emergency. But because we're doing this from the luxury of my lounge, or my home office actually, we are not inclined to have to tell you those things. But thanks for joining us. This is our 4th webinar in just over 10 days, I think. And yeah, we've been amazed at how many people have been keen to log in and have a chat to us or listen to us. Just before I sort of kick in, I just want to make sure people can hear me. So if somebody could say, yes, we can hear you, Campbell, that'd be wonderful. And you've got a Q&A box in there, and you've got a chat box. So if you could just please confirm that I'm not talking to myself, that would be awesome. And at the same time, I'm going to start my video up because I will be talking, I will be doing video as well. One of the things we're trying to bring back into our business is, or not back in, just utilize the technology that we've had for a while, is that regarding, you know, we can do events in the room, we can do bus tours, but we can also do webinars like this where people can actually log in from home, and it's quick, it's easy, and our whole team have been meeting daily at the moment online, and it's been great. So can someone please just tell me they can hear me? That would be great. Under the Q&A box. I just, otherwise I think I will be talking to myself, but I can see the speaker and the camera, and I think I should be able to be seen and heard right now. So I'll just check with someone that we've got video and sound, and I think we do. Right, someone's messaged me that we have. Cool. All right. Great. Thanks, William, Lisa, Verity, and Brian. Good on you all. Fine people. And Sarah. Oh, yeah, I got Sarah. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to rip into it now. So we have been doing these events for the last week or so, more partly to connect and give comfort to where we see the property market at with the effects of COVID-19, but also just to continually engage. I mean, there's a lot of things that haven't changed with this virus, and I'm going to talk about them tonight. And then we're going to spend a bit of time showcasing a couple of projects. And we've done some pretty cool stuff to our website as well. We've done some cool things to our website. I'll just put my laptop. We've done some really neat things to our website that is, I'm going to take you for a wee tour on as well. So I won't do the health and safety or where the toilets are, because you know where they are in your house, but I will get into it. So quick agenda, 2nd of April, financial new year, day 2. I'm going to show the this cool website that we've been looking at that basically gives New Zealand a relativity to the rest of the world. But you know, we're in a huge change, so we'll talk about that initially. Then we'll jump into the property factory's perspective on what this, oh gosh, I knew I did one thing, David, I had to change my name. So we use a central video linking software, and my name's just David Howes. I am not David Howes, even though he's a good guy. It's not letting me rename it anyway. I'll give up on that. I'm Campbell Venning, not David, and David's on this call too. So we'll talk about the property market from our perspective in terms of what we've seen, what we're talking to people about, what we're hearing. Then I'm going to jump into Hamilton, where it's at in the cycle, what suburbs make sense, and then help you identify whether you should buy a house or a townhouse or an apartment. And that's a real easy one because it's numbers driven. And cash flow plus growth equals your real return on investment. So, you know, from a how you should analyze property perspective, I'll jump into some cash flows. We'll look at Hamilton as a profile, and we're going to look at 2 projects. So that's a quick agenda for the night. I'm going to take about an hour. So hopefully you've either eaten or you're going to eat at the end of it all. So I'm just going to shut my video down for a second. Oh, look at there, I can get to change my name too once I did that. All right, so I've been watching this website called Worldometer, and it tells population growth around the world, and it shows current cases, deaths, and recoveries. Now, it looks pretty doom and gloom when there's nearly 1 million cases, but nearly 200,000 have recovered as of today. This is today's numbers. And we've had 47,000 deaths globally, which is just major. It's like World War II stuff. But if we look at New Zealand and Australia, as of today, New Zealand's up to 797 cases, which is 0.00016% of the population. And it's, or an easier measure, easier math, it's 165 affected people per million people. So if you look at it on that basis, it's tiny. But it doesn't mean we should get back out there and socialise. It means that we should be even more prudent to keep those numbers low. Australia is similar. We're 100. They're actually 200 cases per 1 million people. I thought I updated that. So Australia had 5,000 cases. We've got just under 1,000 cases. They're 100 and they are 200 cases per million people. We're 165 cases per million people. So by world standards, we're tiny. By New Zealand standards and Australian standards, it's still pretty scary times, but at the same time, the government moved pretty quickly. So Worldometer is a website you can go to if you want some international stats. It shows it by country, and it shows what's going on from a affected person basis. But I just thought we'd share that with you because it's a pretty good website. So let's look at New Zealand right now. We're in the middle of a massive crisis, and it's the rating is the largest crisis since the war. Now, when we're all sitting at home and spending time with families and watching Netflix or reading books or working from home, mowing the lawns, doing a DIY, it's pretty hard to compare to never seeing your grandfather or father again, food rations and all of the depression that followed the war. So it is a massive crisis, and they're calling it the largest since the war, but I can't imagine going to war or having a son that goes to war. I can't fathom that. I've watched movies, but it's too mind-bogglingly horrible. But like in New Zealand, New Zealand has gone from a $6 billion turnover to 500 million. That's 8% of their old turnover. And they're sacking a lot of people, and planes are parked up on runways. So tourism has had more of a GFC, and we're going to compare wars and GFCs and things, compare different major crises in the last 20 or 30 years. But this for the tourism industry is not big. It's decade changing. And the related industries of tourism are huge. But property, the GFC, we're at the front of the queue in impact. In this one, we believe we're more at the back of the queue, and we'll talk about that later. So it's not a typical recession for a lot of reasons. If we look at our current situation in New Zealand at the moment, we've got historically low interest rates. We still have a massive housing shortage, and GFC, that was 12 years ago. And now we're in the middle of a situation where we haven't got enough houses for the people that live in New Zealand. We've got unemployment levels that are low, and we've got a government with huge amount of cash reserves, which is one of the reasons that they've been very, very quick to come out with stimulus packages, tax relief, employee support, and bank holidays, and a whole bunch of other things to help people hold on to staff, keep their business open as much as possible in terms of not losing key people. And every day we're getting new announcements. Now, our share market has definitely had an impact, but the difference between now and 2008 is that most of our share market is funded with cash versus debt. So people aren't forced to sell their shares, and we're expecting more pressure on our industry from the share market because it's been all over the place and dropped a lot. Some shares have dropped by 50%. We expect more pressure into the real estate space. But, this is not a holiday where people have lost jobs, people have lost income. And regardless of subsidies and employers reducing hours, it's a real impact on people. And one of the things our team is doing at the moment is giving, a very empathetic ear to customers that have been affected. As far as we're concerned, they're a customer for life. So we will be working with them to do what we can and help them get back on the property ladder once their income's re-established, or they've got a new job, or their job's back on deck. So There are real losses in some sectors, but there's also a lot of sectors that haven't been as affected, and we're only in week one, or we're in week two now, sorry. And we're continually monitoring this. So I guess the point with all of this, it's a massive crisis, but the it was in very good shape before it. So let's compare it to some of the other massive impacts around the world. So post-war, obviously, 87 stock market crash. I was in my teens. I'm now in my 50s. Huge difference. We had massive decreases in manufacturing, and we were manufacturing, high in manufacturing at the time. Inflation was ludicrous. Farm subsidies were removed and farmers had to survive on their own. And we had interest rates in the 20s. 20% interest rate was normal. And off the back of it, the country was placed into a deep recession. I actually bought my first house 5 years after that. And I had no idea what a recession was. The numbers made sense. It was in Wellington, and it was 3-flat property that we bought for $355,000 and sold for $920,000 years later. So not everyone's affected by recessions. I was a first home buyer, and I was a first home investor, and we had no plan. We didn't know what we were doing. It was complete chance and luck that we got into it, but that started a career that's still going to this day. Let's fast forward another 20-something years, 22 years or whatever it is, 21 years, and we have the global financial crisis. And this was a crisis that affected real estate, number one. It's the first cab in the rank to be absolutely impacted massively. And what happened was, if you weren't around then, or if you weren't affected, there was no money available to people. Banks had a run on deposits. Assets were overvalued and overgeared, i.e. banks were lending too much money. We still had high interest rates then, 11%, and our dollar was overinflated. So as a country, we were technically insolvent. And the banks, they stopped lending, and they'd been lending on bad loans for not as bad as America. America had the worst history there, but there was a lot of lending without a lot of audit, and that's one of the reasons we have such high measures at the moment to borrow money. But we're starting to see that loosen, and that was before the coronavirus. So New Zealand had a lot of household debt, 81% on average across the country. So none of those measures, not one of those measures are the same today. So let's look at it today. And the one thing which the coronavirus has done has had an immediate impact on our country. We've gone into lockdown quickly. We've had restrictions put on us quickly. We've had recommendations on social distancing, which has all happened fast and fast and fast. The one thing that has blown me away is the speed at which this government has actually reacted in terms of supporting our country in terms of money, jobs, support, information, education around social distancing and your bubble. It's been lightning fast. We're all now very educated around this virus and how we can prevent it from spreading or continuing. So I do look at it compared to wars and stock market crashes and GFCs as a shorter term issue in our space in the property market. And the culture shock's real and surreal. It's just the streets are empty. You go for a walk with the dog and it's kind of like, where is everyone? It's like Christmas Day at the shops. It's just weird. But our economy is in very good shape apart from the tourism industry. And before this happened, it was in great shape, but it's the most directly affected part of our economy. So we can't ignore it. But I guess once we get a new norm established, people will get on, transact quickly because they have got assets, they have got income, and this curve will flatten eventually, tensions will drop, and a new norm will be established. They're also already talking about China importing again from New Zealand. 30% of our New Zealand-made goods go to China. That's a massive, massive chunk. And they're also the first country to recover from this virus. So see that will help exporters, farmers alike. And also what I'm hearing already is an eagerness to get back into it and support one another. Community spirit after the Christchurch earthquake was really shown how, how strong community spirit was. People were just helping each other in that one. And this crisis is different because you're not allowed to go and see them. But, you know, driveway drinks, contacting your neighbours, contacting your family is still very, very high. And I see that as one of the drivers that will accelerate us out of this crisis, because when you've been at home for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 weeks, you're going to be desperate to transact with other people. And let's go back to the big issue of our industry. We've still got a grossly undersupplied housing market. So if we have 4 or 6 or 8 weeks out, or even 3 months out, it won't stop it. Demand's strong. People will get back to business. People will get back to renting new property. People will get back to building. People will get back to buying and selling homes. It's just a matter of time now. So I see our business economy in the world of real estate already adapting and working remotely. We're online tonight. We could have been in the room if it wasn't for this coronavirus, but you know, we can still deliver what we do digitally. You can listen digitally. So we're expecting it we're companies to adapt. We're already seeing companies adapt, and we're expecting more adaptation. And I guess in terms of the eyes of the different people that play in our industry, we're talking to all of them at the moment. I caught up with my valuer yesterday for a chat. One of our valuers, I've been speaking to our property managers, our vendors and developers, and a lot of them, it's just business as usual. Got delays, they can't do everything that they normally can, but nothing has changed. And we also see the government getting into the technology facilitation around transactions. They've been very quick to deal with education and separating people. I see them actually helping industry adapt as well over the coming months. So, you know, in property, the huge impact for people in property, I guess, from this is people in the short-term market, the Airbnb market, the short-term rental market. You know, our family's got a lot of property in that space, and we're converting to long-term rentals, unfurnished or furnished. This industry or the sector has been getting premiums for a while now, and we just see this is a reset. And it's not across the country in volumes like Queenstown, but you know, places like Central Otago, where huge numbers of tourists went through there, stay in these places. We think it'll go back to normal long-term rentals. Whereas you take places like Christchurch and Auckland, the percentage of short-term rentals compared to long-term unfurnished or long-term furnished is a much smaller percentage. Whereas in Queenstown, it's the big chunk of the market. So you're going to see an impact there. But at the same time, I wouldn't be rushing in to buy, because who's your tenant? And I think Queenstown could be in for a reset in terms of the top end, the premium market. But in terms of mum and dad housing, they've still got a massive shortage. So impact on the property management industry, I see them already working to social distance tenants for viewings and getting ready to manage that, like supermarkets are today, yesterday, the day before, and tomorrow. They'll do video walkthroughs to help tenants see properties and make decisions from online versus face-to-face. So I see the industry, from tenants to property managers, all adapting. We actually had a settlement today, and it was a Christchurch property. It was a Waikato landlord, and it was an out-of-town service worker who's basically in the key service industry, and that all happened. So the government wants people to transact, and for essential services they can right now, but we're expecting the government to allow more businesses to transact, as long as they're not going to facilitate, encourage, or help this virus expand. Banks, they're the same. They don't make money unless they're lending. And they want to lend. They've got the government behind them. And we're already seeing a lot of monetary policy easing at the moment. Business loans approved overnight, subsidies, bank mortgage holidays. So homes will be bought and sold. Investment properties will be bought and sold. And we will adapt as an industry. The last one is construction. How is that going to be impacted? Well, the best comparison in my eyes is when they changed the health and safety rules in New Zealand on construction. had a massive focus a few years ago off the back of a review of the Resource Management Act and health and safety on construction sites and for builders and people in the industry that are actually building things. It was huge at the time, and it was a massive cost to the industry, and it was a direct impact to the cost of real estate. So I see construction similar ways, but on a much smaller scale. There'll be distancing between people working, there'll be rules around that, and I just see them adapting. And I see it as a smaller adaptation than the health and safety changes, which are now enforced today. So before I jump onto Hamilton and as a location, throw me some questions. Give me some comments regarding the impact of the coronavirus in terms of people's views, people's thoughts, people's how they see it. And because I guess what we did the other night, we did a bit of a Q&A at this point, and we had some good feedback and questions. And we've analysed it left, right, and centre, and we've talked to a lot of people in our world. We've from bankers to valuers to property managers to investors to seasoned bods. There's a lot of information flying around at the moment. So before I jump into Hamilton, is there any other questions people have got or comments they want to make the impact of this virus on our on our industry? So I'll just give that a minute for a couple of questions there. The Q&A box is where you can enter those, and otherwise I'll move into our nice friends in the Waikato, and then a bit more of a tour of our website, which is coming up. So I'll give it a couple of minutes. I'll give it a second, and if there aren't any questions, I'll just carry on. But it looks like we don't have any, which is good. All right. Okay, so that was the Property Factory's update on coronavirus and how we think it's going to impact us. So now what we're doing this week, we did this on Tuesday night, we're doing it tonight. We're focusing on Hamilton as a city and why it makes sense to invest. And I'm going to talk about strategy, I'm going to talk about balancing portfolios, and then I'm going to talk about product type. So stay with me. I'll turn my video off. There we go. So Hamilton's New Zealand's fourth largest city, and it's the third fastest growing region after Auckland and Pukekohe. Population estimated at the moment about 157,000 and 15,000 in 2 years. So, sorry, the population in 15 was 157, and we think it's grown by 15,000 in the last 2 years. Expected to be at 175,000 by 2022, and it's the city located right in the middle of the Waikato. It's one of our richest regions, responsible for 20% of total exports. Agriculture, biotech, aviation, transport, logistics, science, technology, education, healthcare, all lead the Hamilton economy, and it provides a lot of different employment opportunities. It's not like Dunedin, where a lot of the employment's in the student sector or education sector. So this is our risk assessment of the expected impact on Hamilton on the different industries. And we think most of them are low to moderate, and the only one that's high is aviation. And even then in the medium term, we don't see that. Once the airways are moving again, we see it moderate. So we don't see a lot of impact on the virus, on Hamilton from the virus. And I guess as let's call it a new city, it's not new in the sense that it's only become a city. It's been a city for a while, but it's very much new in that there's a lot of new stuff happening in Hamilton, from water to roads to infrastructure. And it's part of what they call the corridor to Auckland. And you've got the central corridor, which sort of covers Huntly through to Te Kawata, just below Pocono. And then you've got the Hamilton CBD area, in the surrounding areas. And then you've got the Papakura Pocono corridor. And if you look at Hamilton in the next 20, 30 years, Auckland and Hamilton are almost going to be joined through these different corridors that the government is future-proofing from a infrastructure investment, linking roads, linking towns. The high-speed train there on the left is, it'll be a while before we have those in New Zealand, but they are talking about a 60-minute service between Hamilton and Britomart that is the goal. and they're pretty confident they're going to get it to 80 minutes over the coming years. And when I say coming years, sooner than later, not 10 years, less than 2 years. So there's a lot of work going on to connect Hamilton to Auckland so that people can live in Hamilton and commute to Auckland outside of the road, and that train network is part of it. So if we look at Hamilton Council's 10-year plan, the orange line there shows 40,000 houses by the 2048, and currently sitting at 2020, they're at 300 and something a year. So from I guess from a long and sitting at, this is new dwellings, currently sitting at about 12,000 new dwellings. In fact, I've got the actual numbers here, 12,500. There's 58,000 current dwellings with 12,500 new dwellings over the next 10 years and 32,000 new dwellings over the next 30. So this is in their 10-year plan. So they've got a strong focus on new. And this is where, from a product point of view, Hamilton makes sense, because when you're talking new properties, they're typically smaller, they're typically cheaper, and from a landlord point of view, they're typically cheaper to run. So it's a 20. So let's just look at now. So we're in Hamilton, but now we're dropping down to suburbs, and we're going to look at two suburbs. We're going to look at Frankton, and we're going to look at Hamilton Central. So Hamilton Central as a suburb has been growing very quickly. It's now it's the 20th largest suburb in Hamilton. Now remember, CBDs used to not have residents, and Wellington was like that 30 years ago. So if you look at the majority of residential housing stock in Hamilton, it's been built in the last 20 years. And if you look at owner-occupier versus rented, the bulk of the CBD market is actually rental property. So, and with median sale price of just under 600,000, we expect more population growth from tenants and owner-occupiers. And at some point that might balance out, but a big chunk of the CBD population is tenanted, which is good when you're buying property at this stage of the cycle. So that's a quick overview of Hamilton Central. If I do the same thing for Frankton, it's the 6th largest suburb in Hamilton. So it's a much more established suburb, and it's got a lot of properties in it. Most of the infill housing is newer than the CBD, in that it's really a lot of new housing created since 2010. Similar number of renters versus owners, and a much cheaper sale price of 480 versus 600. But there are suburbs in Hamilton with, prices that median out at 1.24 million. So we expect Frankton CBD to grow on the tenant and occupier front, and as locations go, it's got all the right trajectory for constant growth over the next 20, 30 years. So if you're getting in at the beginning, and those infill housing projects, infill housing is basically where developers bought 3 old houses, demolished them, and they're building 20 townhouses or apartments. That's infill housing. And the infill housing is your safest product as a investor, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we've picked and recommended Frankton and Hamilton CBD as very safe places to buy. You've got a bulk of the population are renting. Your prices are well under the median sale price as for the whole city, and expected population growth. So that smells occupancy, not vacancy. It smells growth, not stagnation, and it smells a growing rental or tenant pool, which should increase rents as well, with more professional jobs coming into the city. So that is the quick summation of those two suburbs. So let's now jump to, well, why Hamilton, why Frankton, why CBD? Now, if we go back to we've had a couple of education businesses in the past where we taught people long-term, low-risk investing. And the good thing is we used to charge for those services. Now they're free. And if there's a lot of information on our website which complements those comments, because we don't believe in this day and age you actually need to charge for education. So we give it away for free as part of our as part of our website. And there's so much information on our website. So if we look at a standard property education 101 for a first-time investor, it's as simple as this. If you buy 5 houses over, say, 10 years, and you hold them for 10 to 15 years, which is typically 2 cycles, you can literally live off rents in retirement. That's as simple as it needs to be. So if you're starting in your 20s or 30s, you can do that twice over. If you're starting in your 40s or 50s, you can do it pretty easily once. And if you're starting in your 60s, you may have to accelerate that acquisition plan a little bit. But it's all very doable if you've got the right balance sheet and you adopt the right rules. And property as a business is actually pretty straightforward. But the mistake a lot of people make is they take their emotional drivers or their emotional decision making into it, and that then causes them to make the wrong acquisition. They'll buy the wrong kind of property, which will decrease their ability to buy more. But if you follow really simple rules in Property 101, you can actually end up with a cash flow positive property from day one that self-funds, self-grows, and after 10, 20 years, you've got significant equity and net cash flow that pays you in retirement. That's as simple as property can be. But it's scary how many people stuff it up. So let's say you start doing that and you start buying property and you're building a business. The other thing that people stuff up is that they often go for capital growth over cash flow at the beginning. Now, these terms are references that most property investors or property investing companies use. Cash flow property is property where the rent is more than the expense. I.e., so if you've got $50,000 coming in per annum and you've got $40,000 going out in interest and rates insurance, there's $10,000 left. That's a cash flow positive property. A capital growth property typically has $50,000 coming in and $60,000 going out, and or $30,000 going in and $35,000 going out. And typically a cash flow property is in a less desirable area to where you want to live, but they're the ones that fund your retirement. So we say in the simple world, buy a bunch of cash flow properties first, then buy capital growth, because the cash flow properties will subsidize it, not your income, and then the portfolio becomes self-funding. It sounds pretty simple, but it's amazing how few people follow that, because a lot of people want a property in Queenstown or Wanaka or Waiheke Island, and as you can see right now in this current climate, if you have a property in Queenstown and it's a short-term property, overnight your income has been decimated. Whereas if you've got boring houses and subdivisions or CBDs that have long-term tenants on 12 or 24-month leases, that's the stuff that funds your capital growth when you're ready to buy one. So we say build a property portfolio that's national, have it split into different product types, which we'll talk about in a minute, but more importantly, buy 3, 4, or 5 cash flow positive properties before you buy capital growth. Cash flow pays pays the interest, it pays the expenses. Yes, you need capital growth properties to get equity gain, but we're currently in an environment where you can actually get that in big cities with new product being infill housing. That's how simple it can be. So that's property 202. Now, getting a little bit more complicated, if we talk about property 303, that is the where the market now also plays a role in terms of what we do, and the location of properties based on where that location is at on what's called the property clock also has an impact on what we do. So just 2 things, cycles and clocks. So property is cyclical. Every 7 to 10 years, it goes through a whole cycle. Every now and then you get a nuance to that. The Christchurch earthquakes have completely changed their cycle, Christchurch's cycle. But if we look at normal property cycles, they're 7 to 10 years, and you can predict what's going to happen by looking backwards. Now, long-term low-risk investors diversify product and they diversify location, which is why, right now it's tempting to put all your eggs in Christchurch because cash flow is so strong and we're expecting capital growth, but you just don't know what's around the corner. So sensibly, we still recommend people buy properties in multiple locations. Now, let's jump to the clock. The clock is an analogy or a pictorial way to measure when you should buy, when you should sell, or when you should refinance. And 12 o'clock's seen as the top of the market. Hot prices have peaked. It's a hot market at 12, and 6 o'clock's seen as the bottom of the market. Prices have dropped. This is the time to buy because you're at the bottom of the price spectrum. So if we look at New Zealand in 2008, the country was at 12 o'clock. If we look at 2014, it was probably at 6 o'clock as a country, and that's basically the 6 years it took for it to recover from 12 o'clock down to 6 and start again. If we look at the last cycle, now every city is different, and there's always the nuances of things like the 2011 Christchurch earthquake. But if you're a property trader, you want to buy at 6 and sell at 12. And whilst it's not always easy to get that exactly right, seasoned people that know what they're doing can read the market and follow that measure. So prices drop through oversupply, falling sales volume, a global financial crisis, construction stopping, etc. But then they pick up again through more construction, rising sales, rising prices, and that's when things move back into the up. But it's scary how many people do the opposite. So we believe we're pretty good at predicting where markets are at, and Franklin's at a different stage of the market than say Wellington or suburban Wellington, as is Christchurch is a very different stage to Hamilton, which is at a very different stage to Auckland. So every city is different, and New Zealand's relatively easy to predict in terms of growth starts in Auckland and moves south. But when you're in a market at the moment like we are, things are changing and you have to reassess it. So we're always doing that. So cycles and clocks are used to help read a market. So let's now overlay this onto real numbers. I'll just zoom in a bit. All right. So top half of the North Island. So the Waikato's current, because you always look at locations compared to each other. We don't deal in the $1 million properties in Auckland, and the median annual price changes. This is basically was released a couple of days ago. This is stats up to the end of February. So Auckland was at 888,000 as the median price right across the Auckland region. That was up 4% from the year before, February to February. If we look at Waikato, it's 583, significant price difference. And as I said earlier, with Hamilton becoming part of the sort of Auckland Tauranga triangle, or the corridor between Hamilton and Auckland, that tells me that it's still got a lot of legs. It's probably at 9, maybe 10 o'clock in some areas, 7, 8 o'clock in others, because infill housing in Hamilton is still relatively new. So it's gone up 10% in the last 12 months. I expect to see that continue, which is why we're recommending it as a location to purchase. And same with Auckland. Infill housing in Auckland's got a 4 in front of it, a 5 in front of it, not a million, not a 900. And that's where we recommend people to be. So Waikato, it's 100, just under 100,000 or 50 to 60,000 under the national median sale price. That's in our world a safe place to be. Come through the south, Wellington is 716. It's been on a steep trajectory for a while. Even the Hawke's Bay at 500, closing in on places like Waikato, which are much more solid population base. So we see the Waikato is still relatively cheap. And then we look to the South Island, and the big anomaly there for us is Canterbury at 474. Which is just insanely low in our opinion. But that 4% growth, February to February, is a sign that we now see that as moving. And when you see places like Otago growing at 20%, and it's now more than Christchurch or Canterbury, we just look at that and think that's crazy, because you cannot compare the economic powerhouse of Canterbury to Otago. It's just so much of a big population base, and it's got so much more economy going in there, that commerce going on there, that we just don't see that as real. So if we look at these over the last 20 years, let's just summarize the country. Auckland's the top line, it's blue, it's flattening off nicely. The current angle up is from infill housing, and it's the only solution for Auckland from a undersupplied location point of view, and subdivisions, houses being greenfield subdivisions, infill housing where developers are buying 3, 4, 5 properties and putting in 20 townhouses. That's the thing that's going to save Auckland's supply problems or solve them. And in the meantime, it's stopping that crazy growth that it had from 2012 through to 2018, that Auckland experience. So it's levelling off, which is good. Green is Wellington, and it was steep there from 16 through to 19. I don't know how much more legs it's got. We're going to see more infill housing in Wellington. We're going to see more greenfield subdivision up the Kapiti Coast and the Wairarapa. And I think that will help level off the CBD prices, which have been on a really steep incline over the last couple of years. And then Hamilton and the bright orange line, that's safe and steady as she goes. It's at the bottom end of the price spectrum at 600. Christchurch in the mid 4s. So, you know, I see that as in the high 4s. Hamilton, Christchurch, safe place to invest. Auckland, infill housing, safe place to invest, because you're talking about the 3 major cities in New Zealand, and Wellington will follow, but we're just not seeing a lot of that product. Right, let's talk now about product, and the product being houses or townhouses or apartments. I've created this little matrix to explain how we look at the difference between a home, a house and land package, or a house with land that it comes with, versus a townhouse versus an apartment. So this is to describe it from a risk and return point of view. If you pay 500 grand for a house and land package in the country, in a suburb out of the city, your cash return will be lower, but your risk will be lower, because if it all turns to custard, you have a lot of purchasers that could buy that as a home. So the next product is a townhouse. So townhouses are typically cheaper than houses, so that's good from a risk perspective. However, there's less people that want to live in them at the moment in New Zealand because that product is not really developed like it has in the Northern Hemisphere. And then we move to an apartment, same thing. Less people in New Zealand proportionally live in apartments, and you can do that by region. Far more people in Auckland live in apartments and Wellington as a percentage, and far more people in Wellington live in apartments than Christchurch as a percentage. But that demographic is changing. And worldwide, more people are moving to apartments than houses from a price and a convenience of proximity to the city perspective. So what product should you be in? Well, we believe all of them, because from a return point of view, the apartments currently returning the highest, townhouses second, and house and land the least. But as we said earlier, you need cash flow. So you get your cash flow from your high yielding apartments and townhouses, you get your capital growth from houses. And that's why those 3 products are the ones that we get people to stick to in the world of long-term low-risk investing. If you decide to get more into property as a business, you might turn into a property trader, which typically has higher returns, but it comes with higher risk. As is Whereas, which is a designation of property in Christchurch that has been classified as those as where you're buying a broken house and you're going to fix it, or buying bare land and chopping it up into blocks and subdividing. Far riskier than as is Whereas, far riskier than property trading, far riskier than houses, townhouses, or apartments. So we use this matrix to basically explain, well, why would you buy a townhouse versus an apartment versus a house and land? And again, we push geographical spread and we push product spread, because you still need those higher returns from townhouses and apartments, but we like you owning houses because capital growth wise, they're going to get better capital growth on average, but lower cash returns. So that's why we categorize houses as the lowest risk, but the lowest return in your product mix. But you buy those last. You buy your apartments and townhouses first, because that's where you get your cash flow from. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to take us for a tour of the website in a second. And when I say the website, because we have houses, we have townhouses and apartments on our website. And from a product point of view, I guess it's might look similar, but the reality is they're in different locations, and they're in different locations, sorry, different cities and different suburbs in those cities, and they all make sense for different reasons based on the investors' numbers. So, any questions on that before I jump into our website and take you for a tour? Because I've just thrown a lot of information at you, and I guess what I don't want is to confuse you. But I also want to make sure that people understand what I'm talking about. And when you think location, think geographical spread, population bases with cities. I mean, if it wasn't for low interest rates that we've got today, we would be in the regions probably promoting secondhand property. But right now in New Zealand, you can buy cash flow positive property that's brand new in major cities. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, and they're still focusing on secondhand crappy old houses, which the gross return might look good, but the net return will be tragic because of the underlying cost to maintain and run those older properties. And that's one of the reasons that we just focus on brand new, because you've got 10-year warranties, 10-year build guarantees, and low maintenance for a long time. So your gross return and your net return are actually quite close with new, whereas with old, your gross return might be 8%, but your net return could be 3%. And you talk to any secondhand owners of secondhand property, and you'll be surprised. So we've got one question. How exciting! So I've just been asked, if you were to buy a potentially cash flow positive townhouse with the lockdown, how do you think it'd be before you get tenants? Good question, because right now we are in lockdown, and even though we had a settlement today, it was because it ticked all the boxes for exempt, people that are part of the industry, part of this dealing, essential worker. But so coming back to this question, so what do you do because of lockdown? Well, right now we're putting people into contracts with new clauses that basically states that the property does not get settled until after 10 days after we go down to level two of the crisis, which allows tenants to move around and move in and out. It allows property managers to go through. One of the small pains in the butt for property investors in New Zealand at the moment is that banks require a valuer to go through the property, but they can't do that right now. So the Auckland District Law Society, who manage all of the different sale and purchase agreements for New Zealand real estate, they've come out recommending that all lawyers for purchasers and vendors put this clause in place that buys the purchasers and vendors time that effectively right now is the same as a weekend, and that settlements don't have to go ahead until we hit level 2. And I've just had a message from another client who says that their property was due to settle in 2 weeks, and now the lawyers have agreed that they're going to wait for a level 2 before they can move. And that's the same with investors. So whether it's a townhouse, an apartment, or a house, it's the same deal. So we're saying to people, still enter into contracts, but we're making sure that clause is included in those contracts. And because we're expecting tenants to get straight back on Trade Me and want to get into new properties, because the thing about all of these new properties, tenants that are moving into them have been coming out of old, cold. We're moving into winter, and we see a real rush once level 2 comes back in place in terms of investors settling and tenants wanting to move in. Okay. So someone else has said, so is it good for a buyer but not for a seller at the moment? No, sellers take 12 to 24, 36 months sometimes to design and build a project. So if they've got to wait 6 more months or 4 more months or 3 more months, we don't think it's going to impact them very much at all. They can just wait. A lot of the projects that we've seen being sold in the last couple of months have been on the market for 6, 12, 24 months in some places. So we don't think it's going to affect sellers too much. All it's doing is putting delays into the system, which I guess is frustrating. But I think, willing buyer, willing seller, I don't see us having massive price drops because of these these restrictions. Some vendors will, but probably more in the owner-occupier space, not the investor-landlord space. We develop the vendors very well, and they're pretty upfront with us in terms of their balance sheets and how long they can ride delays out, because they're used to delays with weather, materials, labour. So this, in their eyes, is just another delay. Good questions, though. Rightio, I'm going to turn my camera off and jump onto our website. So I'm going to take you for a quick tour of our website now. We didn't realise this, but a lot of people were asking us for information that was on our website. So we thought, right, we're obviously good at creating cool websites, but not really good at explaining how to run them. So assuming my technology allows me to take you through, right, so this is our website. Now, the first thing you need to do on our website is register as a free member. Once you do that, you can see our deals. So it takes literally 5 minutes to join. You click on this, join free today, not even 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes. And once you're a member, you get to see everything on our website. But you do need to enter your details, and then you can get what's called an investment capacity report, a property matching report. There's a whole lot of stuff that we give you for free as being part of our membership, and it doesn't cost anything. But you will need to fill out the form that's online. And I'm already a member, which is why it's not taking me to the form. But if you normally click on that button, you will see the different projects. So I'm going to jump on our current projects as a member. So this is what you will see as a member. And we've done some pretty cool things over the last few weeks. And because property is all about matching the numbers of the property with the investor, our people will help you decide what you need. So let's just say the type of property you should buy as an apartment. So right now, we've only got one apartment complex for sale, and it's in Christchurch, and it's the Latimer on Barbados Street, and that was pretty cool. I clicked on that. And basically, every one of our projects now, you can look at it geographically. So we can jump in on this project now, and there's a high-level summary. If I view the project details, so that will give you the high-level numbers from the one bedrooms of 409 up to the two bedrooms are up to 650. It's 50, maybe 70 metres from where the stadium is going to be built in Christchurch, within the 4A. It's right in the middle of the CBD. So great location. And if we jump on view project details, and there's only 5 left in this complex right now. So this is how we show property on our website. There's videos, photos. That's me there doing a video a while ago. This is complete. It's rented, or owner occupiers in it. And there are literally only 5 properties left in this complex. I don't think this shows them all. No, it doesn't. So there's 2 missing there. So this is, again, how we show property. I'll jump back to our little outlook because I'm going to highlight Hamilton tonight. So if we jump on townhouses, it'll then identify the townhouses around the country from Hamilton up to Auckland, and I can see them here on the left. As if I put my mouse over, it'll show you where we are. So if I click on Hamilton, it'll take me to the 2 projects. Yeah, well, this one's clicked on London Street. So it gives you a bit of a fly through so you can see where it is. And if you zoom out, so London Street townhouses are literally across the road from Seddon Park, which is where Black Caps play. And it's right in the middle of the CBD of Hamilton. Can't get much more central than this. So this left-hand column will show you that there's 23 3-bedroom newly built townhouses. It's cash flow positive. You can secure these for a 5% deposit. So they're 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, right in the middle of town. So we'll jump on this project, and this is how we show all projects. So this is finished. This is not off the plan anymore. It's brand new. No one's occupied the 5 that are for sale, and it's cash flow. So we've just reset all of our cash flows because we were using an interest rate that was much higher than what you can get on the market. So we've just reset our interest rates to 3.25%. So all of our new we've just updated every cash flow for every deal with interest rates at, I better just check, it is 3.2, yep, 3.25%. But all of those assumptions are on our website. So just bear with me, I'm just going to quickly show you this product. So this is London Street, Hamilton Central. I can see we've assessed the market for this location for this product at 8 o'clock. It's early in the growth cycle for townhouses. And we believe these are cheap for what they are. If they're in Wellington, they'll be a lot more. If they're in Auckland, they'll be a lot more in a location like this. So we also analyse the property as how it would look, how it would look for a first-time investor, how it would look for a property investor. A first-time buyer is an owner-occupier, and first-time investor is an owner-occupier that gets a flatmate, and a property investor is someone that's renting it out. So these have gross yields in the high 4s. There's only 5 available, and there they are there, and they're all 665. So there's a huge amount of information on our website, and you can see there are 150 to 160 square meters. They come with 2.5 bathrooms and 2-car garage, and that's a lot for 665 in the middle of Hamilton. We now have this area here where it's showing our assumptions. So we do cash flows on interest-only loans and principal interest loans. We use now the interest rate of 3.25. Rates are actual. CPI is historically 3%, so we're using that. We're using New Zealand's long-term capital growth rate of 7%. It's actually a little bit more than that. So New Zealand's long-term capital growth is actually 7 point something. So we just flatten it out at 7. But we believe we're using pretty conservative assumptions when we do a cash flow, which I'm about to show you. On the left here, we've got these blue documents that you can download. We can download a body corporate budget, which has been set by the body corporate manager for this complex. We can download the body corporate rules, which have been put together by the developer, signed off then by the body corporate manager. We can download the floor plans for each property, and you'll see these: ground floor, first floor, second floor. And you can zoom in on these, you can see the elevations, etc. So there's more information on this. You can look at the title, specifications that you get within your property in terms of what is made up in terms of the kitchen fit out, the materials, the spouting, the bricks, everything is in here. You can have a look at a site plan. So we have all of the due diligence on each deal in blue, and you can download those. And we've also obviously got photos. As again, these are actual, these aren't renders, these are real photos from inside, from out. And with such I guess, a hot spot, there's only 5 left, and we can map in just to see again where it is related to the rest of the CBD, and it's smack bang in the middle, right next to Seddon Park. And there's information on Hamilton. So if you're saying to yourself, wow, this is great, I want to buy one of these, we take you through a process where you will request a contract, and you'll click on this button here, or you'll contact one of our team, and they will take you through how you can do that. But this is a request for contract form. It's not a binding agreement, but you give us your information so that we can fill out a proper sale and purchase agreement on your behalf. And then we manage that as a business for you. So that's basically, there's a huge amount of due diligence, and while you're all stuck at home, you can spend time on our website and look at these things, but you can't do that until you're a member. So please subscribe as a member. There's hours of due diligence on these deals. So I'm just going to jump to the other one. So this one's in the CBD, the other one's in Frankton, which is CBD, very close to the CBD. So if I go back to current projects, we'll do another fly-in. And sorry, I've just gone in the wrong way. So if we look at the other one in Hamilton, I'm now going to zoom in this way, because this is effectively a live mapping tool that shows our projects by geographical location. And you can see now Queens Ave, Frankton, London Street, Central. So if I click on this, it'll take me for the same information. And you can see where it is. It's very close to the lake, Lake Rotorua, and it's basically a whole bunch of townhouses and terraced units, townhouse duplexes and duplexes. And cash flow is 30 to 64 bucks a week. Actually, I didn't do a cash flow on that last project, so I'm going to show you the cash flow on these, but they're both cash flow positive. And one of the cool things that actually I didn't show you before, so we can look at projects by list, which will show you a list of each project, or you can actually view projects by financial performance. So what we've done here, we've ranked them based on capital growth or cash flow or suburb performance. So this is ranked by net yield. So then you can click on a link in here and it'll take you straight to the project. So our highest yielding product is actually in Christchurch, followed by Kelston, Auckland, in terms of net yield. But then if you look at capital growth, Queens Ave, Frankton is number 2. Sorry, no, it's not. Karamu Street and Te Atatu Peninsula is number 1. So you can look at these based on the different metrics that we've created for them, whether it be price, whether it be a combination. And again, one property isn't better than the other. It's just different numbers, different metrics, and we help you match property to our numbers. And that's why it doesn't matter what the project is, each makes sense for different people. So I can jump into each project based on all of these different metrics. So if I click on this one, I'm now going to jump back into those townhouses and these terraced units in Frankton. So there are 8 2-bed duplexes, 6 2-bedroom terraced units, and 8 3-bedroom duplexes, and 50%. So this is off the plan, so it doesn't exist today. Which, from a viewing of tenants' point of view, the coronavirus does not affect this project. Prices are $550 for 2 beds, 3 beds are $650, and the terraced units are $520. And on this one, we've got discounts under valuation of $15,000 to $30,000. So the developer is selling them below registered valuation to incentivize people, hence why he sold 50% of them. We see this location similar to CBD. It's about 8 o'clock. It's an off-the-plan project, which you should get growth before settlement. You only have to put 10% down. In fact, this developer was taking 5% on the other ones. I'm thinking he may be taking 5% on this, but assume 10. And I guess as a project, with off the plan, you're only putting 10% down now, maybe 5 on this, and you don't pay for it until it's finished. So this is expected to complete at the end of the early 2021. So you're going to get up to a year's, if not more, capital growth as it's being built. And we'll just look at the numbers here. So you've got the different units that are available. And again, we've got all the information on the site. So you can spend time on, I won't spend too much time on this. You can spend time at home looking at the different products in here, because there's 3 different product type in the complex. But again, we have, now what I will do is take you through a property investor forecast, which shows you how we measure cash flow. So we do this for every project, and this is a 2-bedroom duplex. Okay, so it's showing $54 a week cash flow positive on an interest-only mortgage, and on a principal interest mortgage, it's costing $149, which will be debt repayment and cash flow. So as a product, $2,800 a year cash flow positive before tax as an interest-only mortgage. But if you're paying it off, obviously a part of your repayments are capital, so you're paying back debt. So your equity is going up as you're paying it off, or it's staying, it's the cash that you're putting into it is actually paying off the mortgage. And if you look at it from a graph point of view, if this property was finished, in 10 years' time, assuming it got the capital growth that we're talking about, it'll be worth $1,069,000 in 10 years. And if you were paying off the mortgage, you would end up with $650,000 worth of equity. But if you were interest only, you'd have $500,000 worth of equity. And this is one of the reasons that property investors don't pay down the debt, because capital growth gives them equity, equity over time. And as long as the rent and costs, rent covers costs, there is an argument to preserve cash flow to focus on non-deductible debt, or non-property debt, or sorry, non-rental property debt, if you've still got a home mortgage. So this is basically our website, how we show properties, the different measures that we've got. Every single property that we put on our website has all of this due diligence. We analyze it as a first home investor, a first home buyer, or a property investor. You can get our team to do your own cash flow. These are our assumptions. As I said, we've reset interest rates today based on, you can actually get interest rates in the 2s now. You can get 2.8, 2.9. So we decided that we were being too conservative with our numbers. Here you can see Frankton, where it's very close to the CBD. It's the next suburb out. So it's cheaper than CBD, but fractionally further out. So again, you can also work out repayments on our website as a first home buyer or a property investor. That's pretty much the website tour. So I'm going to jump back to my slides because I'm going to take you through a few things, but I see a question, so I'm just going to answer that now. So hopefully that wasn't all too deep, and you can spend some time on our website. So someone's asked, what deposit do we factor in when we analyse deals? We analyse all of our deals assuming 100% finance. So we don't work it on 80% lending or 70 or 60, we work it on 100% lending. We factor in the interest on the deposit as well as the bank loan. So if you're getting 80% from bank A and you're putting in 20% from bank B, we calculate all of those cash flows on 100% finance, being the interest on both. A good question. Okay. All right. So just want to give you also a bit of an understanding that whilst we spend a lot of time and money putting together lovely reports, lots of due diligence on our deals, information on the location, capital growth rates from the past and projections going forward, we also work with Real Estate Institute of New Zealand. We're a member. We are governed by the REA, which is the Real Estate Authority. We make sure that we're compliant on all levels using AML solutions as our anti-money laundering process for identifying who you are and who the vendor is. We use a company called Property Suite that runs our website from a sale and purchase point of view. So as soon as you request a contract for us, all of your information is very much protected, and we manage the process right through. If it's a 12-month or 24-month settlement, right through to settlement, we'll send you updates. And so we're a very digital real estate agency, hence why this lockdown hasn't impacted us too much. We use this Property Suite CRM, which basically, I think about 40% of the New Zealand real estate industry uses it. And we use pretty much every function. We've just been finally using the digital signature function. I think we're one of the few real estate companies to do that. So you can actually transact with us from home. You can literally buy a property and do all the paperwork with us from home. Now, we probably wouldn't let you do that without making sure that all of the other due diligence is catered for in terms of inspections, value is getting through, etc. But you literally can go into contract with us. You can, we'll talk you through it from a start to finish point of view, and get to the point where you are owning a property. Now, we've been working through with buyers in this last week or two, knowing the lockdown was coming. And I've been amazed at how, I guess, streamlined our processes and how much of an impact that's had on people, to the point that Property Suite's allowed us to really make it easy for people. So you don't even have to print out contracts, you can sign them online. And again, our digital team, we can talk you through how to do that. So let's now look at one of our coolest products, which is called the Investment Capacity Report. If you jump, go back to our website, one of the things you will see under the members dashboard is a, just waiting, you'll see a button that enables you to get an investment capacity report. Take you about 5 minutes to input the data that we need to then send you a 6-page report that will tell you what you can do based on your financial information. Okay, we hold this confidentially on your behalf. We send you a 6-page report that explains the difference between income, equity, and how that impacts what you can buy or can't buy, or should buy or shouldn't buy. And this is a free report, free service. I think I don't know anyone else that does this in New Zealand. And if you click on that page, fill out your information, 24 hours later, we'll send you this 6-page report, which shows the different metrics that the banks look at when considering lending you money or not. Now, everyone's different. Some people are equity rich and cash poor or cash weak, and some people are cash strong and equity weak. So what we do with this report is use it as an education and financial literacy tool to explain to you, well, why the bank said no, or why the bank will say no if you go for property A versus property B. So we've got 2 reports, this investment capacity report and another one called a property matching report. This one tells you what you can do. The second report will tell you how you will look if you buy property A, B, or C. And it's a hypothetical report that basically fast forwards or forecasts how you look in the eyes of a bank. And they're really powerful. We've had hugely positive feedback on them. And while you're stuck at home, if you haven't done this, please do it, because our team will then talk you through the report and explain why you can afford on income to buy $4 million worth of real estate, but on equity you can only afford to buy 800,000. And it's a real eye-opener, and we've created it because property investing is all about working within the bank's rules. You know, if you're going to be borrowing money to buy property, you need to work within their rules. And the big thing that people don't really get is that high personal incomes are far less relevant or far less important than solid rental income. Your banks, every bank in New Zealand likes the tenant more than they like the investor. And the reason I can make that comment is that when they take your income, if you're on $100,000 a year, they will only take 35% of that, or $35,000, to service debt in their calculations. Same, and with rental income, they take 75% of the income. So if you've got $100,000 worth of rental income, they take 75,000 of it for debt servicing purposes. And this is the reason, this is the trick of why so many people on lower incomes have been able to amass a property portfolio, because when they send their financials off to the bank, the rental income is far more important than the personal income. So high incomes don't mean you can just keep buying property madly, but they're typically the people that go and buy in Queenstown or Waiheke Island or high growth areas but low cash flow. And this is why the boring, long-term, unfurnished rentals are so much more important than your Flash Harrys in Wanaka and Queenstown. And your first 3-4 properties should be high in income. So yeah, that's a product you can get for us, from us. So we call them ICRs, Investment Capacity Reports, and PMR, Property Matching Report. Please spend time on our website reading our due diligence and understanding it. Talk to your broker or bank about lending now. And you can use our services to invest remotely. our team are very engaged right now with people. So we're using this lockdown time to get people on the phones, working with customers. So for us, it's an opportune time to educate, facilitate people getting into contracts. And once the lockdown comes off, we will then start the clock with those people. But we see it as an opportunity to get your head around property investing. If you haven't done it before, the greatest way to start is to actually, go through the process of purchase. Even if you don't go and buy something in the end, we will make sure that you're lined up with properties that make financial sense to you. And when you go through that due diligence process, you'll probably learn more in your first deal than you'll learn in the next 5 deals. So we know once we've done that with you, you will be a much more educated investor, and you'll be informed, and you'll know whether you'll be able to. It's like a light bulb goes on. So give me some questions, team. I will find my mouse in a second. Sorry, I'll just stop my PowerPoint presentation. So I will take some questions now. And yeah, give me some thoughts, give me some comments. We think now is a great time to do your homework on deals. We think that all this downtime allows people to spend good quality time understanding the different metrics, asking our team questions. The market isn't stopping in the sense that property is still a solid asset. People are still renting. Restrictions are on at the moment, but they're going to come off at some point. And we are saying, hey, make use of this time to get in a position where you can actually transact quickly if it's your first time, or if it's not your first time. These Hamilton townhouses, in our opinion, are going to fly out the door pretty quickly. To get your foot on one, the vendor was very flexible with, or all vendors are at the moment, they're being very flexible with settlement timing, because they know that people can't settle in the midst of a lockdown like this. So yeah, make use of this time. So I'll stay in line for a little bit longer to answer any questions. Please send them through. You can type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to answer them. I started talking without the microphone. So not too many questions tonight, but I guess in terms of just looking at some of them, people are asking about deposits. Someone's asked me, what's your preference, Auckland or Hamilton? Look, the reality is they're both important. Auckland's is the biggest powerhouse of the country. Infill housing there, if you're buying it in the 4s or 5s or 6s for a 1, 2 or 3 bedroom, I can't see those doing anything but going up. They're brand new. They've got 10-year warranties. They're in locations where, the housing should all be bulldozed. So people are moving into them in their droves. But, the yield on that's going to be much lower than Hamilton. So it depends on what your priority is, and only the numbers can answer that. So when anyone tells me what's the best place to invest, I go, all of the locations we promote, subject to your numbers. If you've got 2 properties in Christchurch, then I think you should buy in Hamilton or Auckland. If you've got 3 in Auckland, I think you should buy in Hamilton or Christchurch. So, if you've got 800,000, someone's just asked, if you've only got 800,000, where would you buy? Well, look, for me, at the moment, you can get 80% lending. And for me, it'd be cash flow drives the first decision. Second would be purchase point. If you've only got 800 grand, I wouldn't buy one property for 650. I'd either buy 2 at 400 or 1 at 350 and 1 at 550. a 450, a 550, 450 and 350, or, I would balance it out, because the one thing you've got to remember, once you've bought these properties, that rent, that 500 a week or 600 a week, now gets calculated when you're buying your next property. So it's really important that your equity and cash flow is growing at the same rate. Otherwise, you'll get rejected on a loan for one or the other. So I would say 80% of customers, if they're spending 800,000, we're recommending cash flow, because whether it's Hamilton or Auckland infill or Christchurch brand new infill or brand new, we're expecting capital growth in all of those locations. So from a banking point of view, the highest yield should win. But if you've already got two in Christchurch, then we would steer you into somewhere like Hamilton, because the yields in Hamilton are solid. So yeah, we'll help you make that decision. Our team is awesome at doing that. And we'll look at things. Great questions coming up now. Who's your tenant? Well, it's different. The tenant in West Auckland's different to the tenant in CBD Hamilton, and they're different to the tenant in Sydenham Christchurch. But the one thing I'll say about new property, it typically attracts good tenants that don't want to move, they don't want to be thrown out, they respect the property, and they're paying a bit more of a premium than the second-hand properties in those locations. So I see apartments, townhouses, and house and land all as really good product to attract the right tenant. So I just see this as the future of New Zealand investment property. Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch, Auckland, big population locations. You don't need to go into the suburb. You don't need to go into the regions. You go into the regions. The danger of the regions, take Tokoroa at the moment. It's a small town with typically one employer being the mill. Dunedin is a rental population. The main tenant in Dunedin is students, and they're not 52 weeks of the year, and they're not the greatest tenants on the properties. You don't need to be in those markets at the moment, because you can buy brand new professional tenanted properties in Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, and Christchurch, and soon to be Wellington. We had a project in Hamilton that we got one property in, and the rest was sold to owner-occupiers really quickly, and it went to an investor. And I imagine they've already had capital growth since they bought it. It was off the plan. So Wellington's a key location, but the yields are much lower because your purchase price is much higher. So it comes down to the numbers. Let's see if I've got any more questions. So I'll stay online for a bit longer. We really are a full service business. We want to have, look, if we're doing our job right, you'll come back to us for the next 10 years and buy a property off us every year, or a couple in 1 year. And that's how we operate. We don't want to we want a long-term relationship with you. And from that point of view, it's really important we get our numbers right for you. So we're using the math that the banks use. We're using long-term, low-risk, conservative strategies. I think, a lot of people will, get onto the property bandwagon over the next few months. I think it's becoming more and more years. It's getting more and more popular, and that just puts pressure on prices. So yeah, I think, we're in an environment with interest rates where you can buy brand new properties. You lock in the debt for 3, 4, even 5 years. The cash flow positive from day one. That is extremely rare. Normally you're buying crappy old rentals that are falling apart that you're going to spend a lot of money on. So we're in an environment which is, I haven't seen it for probably my whole property career. So yeah, good questions. Right, I'll keep looking at them and reading them out and answering them as I go. Good question here is, do we have property managers that we recommend? And the answer is yes. And one of the other good things about large populations, you've got a lot of choice when it comes to things like property managers, valuers, body corporates. I mean, and you don't choose the body corporate manager, but in a big city, the complex developer or the committee that they appoint chooses the property body corporate manager. So yeah, we've got great property managers in Hamilton. We've got great developers. The developer of those two projects, one off the plan and one is completed, he's got a long history. He builds 75 to 100 houses per annum. We've spoken to a lot of people that have dealt with him, and he's got a great reputation. We think he's extremely equitable and fair on his pricing. So yeah, I think, you know, and one of the things we do, we spend a lot of time doing homework and due diligence on our developers. So we only work with ones who have a track record that we're comfortable with. We turn down probably 80% of the developers that ask us to sell their product. So anything you see on our website has made its way there through a lot of I dotting and T crossing and double checking from us. So yeah, we don't spend all that time and money putting projects on our websites unless we have done the homework prior. So yeah, Hamilton's got great property managers. Just thank you for information. Look, this property investing, there's a lot to learn. You know, we've been doing it for nearly 30 years, and you forget what you know. So we've built our website, we've trained our team to give you as much insight and information as possible. And you know, from our point of view, we just want, because the more you know, the more it makes sense. And if it makes sense, you'll buy property and become self-sufficient when you retire. And that's our goal, is to get everybody building a portfolio that helps them live in retirement. So yeah, great questions, team. Someone's asked, should I go to my bank manager or specialist mortgage broker? Always the broker. Bank managers say yes or no. Brokers will help structure your debt properly. Investment lending is tax deductible, home lending is not. So we actually have a big team of brokers around the country that we are completely independent of. We only recommend them from a experience point of view, no other reason. So if you don't have a good, because we call them investment specialists, because doing a mum and dad home loan is very different to doing an investment loan. So, you know, from a who should you use point of view, it's also down to how busy they are. So at the moment we might send you to somebody in Christchurch or Wellington. As far as we're concerned, all we care about is that they've got the right capacity. They can actually help you in time, because contracts are time sensitive. And secondly, you know, is the broker the right broker? So we've already vetted about probably 10, maybe 12 brokers around the country. So yeah, that's what we do. Alrighty, I want to wrap it up. I still see people online, but the reality is we're winding it down now. So I'll sign off and have a hopefully another good week of numbers going down with this virus, and also hopefully we see you in a property purchase at some point, and we can help you with. We'd love to help you. We get a lot of a kick when we bring new investors into the industry, and we get a kick when we see investors genuinely building a portfolio that's self-funding. So yeah, on that note, have a safe evening or a safe week, and good weekend, and hopefully you're getting your head around this whole being in isolation business. So take care, and we hope to see you soon.